is 9:01, so we'll officially call the meeting to order. The first agenda item we have is the November 16, 2022 meeting minutes. Hopefully you've had a chance to review those minutes, and if so, we'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
This is Brad. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, with the first from Brad.
Steve will second.
Okay, second from Steve. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, it looks like our meeting today is a lot of informational updates. We'll start off on informational item number 3A, Lori and Julie, the 2022 achievements.
Okay, so Brian, are you going to pull up the PowerPoint or do I need to share that? There we go. Thank you. Appreciate that. So next slide. Annual achievements. So this is the 2022 was a busy year. We have been working to purchase some large buses along with the Duluth Consortium. It's a bunch of transit agencies, and Duluth is the lead. We've been working with them for a couple of years to purchase large buses. They had to get some approvals due to the economy and the cost of parts and things to do a force majeure clause, which means they raise the prices like 20% because of all of the costs involved in actually building the buses. So we are now trying to wait for the last final price on our specific cost proposal, and then we should be able to place an order here in early 2023 for one Moorhead and 8 Fargo buses to replace our aging fleet. So that's something we've been working with for a couple of years. I'm glad to see that that'll be coming to the end, and we can order some buses. We ordered 2 Moorhead paratransit buses back in November of 2021, and that delivery has been delayed now till at least April of 2024 or later, and it's based on the availability of the Ford chassis. And then we did do and receive delivery and installation of a new shop hoist at the Metro Transit Garage. And the dispatchers were given a handheld language translator to help with communication downtown at our transfer station. And as you've probably heard from us in the past, we did actually implement this new account-based fare structures with our mobile ticketing that was implemented in May of 2022 after, again, like a 2-year process during COVID. Next slide. Route changes, we have had some temporary suspensions due to driver shortages. In January of 2022, we reduced the frequency on routes 11, 13, 14, and 15 and stopped tap ride service on Saturdays and ended service earlier. Instead of 11:15, we ended service at 9:45. That continued until May of 2022, at which time we put back some of our frequencies again, and we're operating still at 9:45 at night and not till 11:15. We still didn't have enough drivers to go full evening service. And then Fargo made a bunch of changes to their route, some minor changes on consistency and on-time performance, trying to make sure that all of their routes could meet up and make transfers. And I don't know if Cole, do you want to talk about that at this point?
Sure. So late 2022, we did see an approval by the Fargo City Commission to, like Lori said, make some minor adjustments on a couple of different routes in Fargo to improve on-time performance. Mainly routes 18 and route 20, we were seeing issues of those routes being on time, say 70 to 80% of the time. So we just kind of looked at is this route realistic for drivers to be able to make in that time? And because of that, we look to make some cuts to make it more achievable for the drivers, make it more consistent for passengers, and just try to increase the consistency of those routes. With that, we reduced Route 18 by 3.6 miles. Route 20 was reduced by 1.06. Did a little bit of rerouting with both of those to try to make as minimal impacts to existing riders as possible, while also just decreasing the overall time. We also looked at a couple different things on Route 15 to try to increase on-time performance there. A slight route tweak with that. We were able to reduce it by about half a mile. We also removed a few stops along the route to make it so that the bus didn't have to stop quite as frequently. And we've been seeing some positive changes all around with those. There was a very slight change to Route 32 by the NDSU campus, just traveling on a couple of different roads to make it so that there's less of a chance of us getting stuck during the winter. So overall, we've noticed very positive changes with all these route adjustments. So we're just going to keep evaluating as time goes on and make sure that we can continue to improve things.
Thank you. Next slide. In Moorhead, after like 3 years, we were finally able to take Route 3 off a detour, you know, for that the grade separation underpass on 20th, 21st Street by the high school. So we were glad to be able to put that back to its normal route. And then we've been working with some shelters and facilities here. We send out our request for qualifications for architecture and engineering services to improve the Dilworth Walmart Transit Hub. That was distributed in 2022 and awarded in early 2023, and we have a kickoff meeting for that design work next week. So that's been making some good progress. We did, you know, downtown Center Avenue in Moorhead was reconstructed, and those shelters have reached 20 years old. So we have, we're in the process of ordering new shelters that will be delivered this spring and early summer to go along with the new streetscape on Center Avenue. And so that we sent out those proposals, received 3 proposals, and are in the process of designing the shelter itself right now. We also we went out for bids for 9 replacement shelters with solar lighting for Moorhead shelters. A lot of our shelters were purchased in 1980 and 1982 and are not hooked to electricity, so the solar lighting will be a great improvement. And this is the new design that you may have seen over by Hornbachers, the Clay County Courthouse. So it'll be refreshing of our shelters. And we'll get a number of those installed in 2023 and still have a few on hand as we continue to replace our aging shelters. We did finish our safety plan, or updated our safety plan in July. That was a federal requirement, and we have a safety committee that meets every other month to review and make sure that we are driving our buses and are working in our facilities in a safe manner. We also updated our transit asset management plan. That's done every 4 years. That was completed in October. Our triennial review ended up being a four-year review by the Federal Transit Administration. It was about a 6-month process, and we completed that in 2022. And then Moorhead did a complete equipment inventory and physical on-site verification and correlation with our financial records. With our finance department as we began a new inventory control process. Next slide. So other achievements, we did amend our 2022 contract, as you may recall, to increase driver wages so that we could retain drivers and be on a more competitive level for replacing drivers. And we also negotiated the 2023 year with First Transit's contract, and so those that contract's now in place through the end of 2023. And then we did go out for bids for shelter cleaning, snow removal, and custodial services, and then we're working with the state of North Dakota on replacement of our auto voice announcement and auto vehicle location systems on our fixed route. That's that live tracking system, and also updating our paratransit dispatch software. Both of those technologies are well over 10 years and in need of replacement. We are with Fargo. They have a new billing calculation with West Fargo that was approved by the West Fargo City Commission. And we began some roundtable discussions for improving our paratransit operations. We have had a great increase in demand on paratransit. We'll talk about that, I think, later on in our informational slides here. But basically, we're increasing beyond our pre-COVID levels for paratransit, and we're looking at more efficiencies in scheduling and staffing, and our software replacement will help with that. But that's ongoing discussions that we're having in our with our staff. Next slide. 23 goals. Julie.
Yes, thank you. We are in the process of issuing a request for qualifications and a scope of work for a planning study so we can go on to phase 2 and implement aspects that we've discussed in the past, working towards the transit authority. The complete construction of the Dilworth Walmart Transit Hub. I know Lori has high hopes. We'll get that done this year. And again, like she was saying, replacing some of the shelters on Center Avenue with all the new things that the city of Moorhead's doing there. And Moorhead will be purchasing 9 new shelters to replace aging structures. We currently have, Fargo has shelters in stock. I believe we have 10 that we are going to be placing in various locations, and we're going to be giving some of our existing shelters to the city of West Fargo since we don't have any set up over there. And like Lori was just saying, we will get the technology updated for our scheduling software on paratransit and the live tracking for the fixed route system for both Fargo and Moorhead. We did apply for some grant money to do some improvements to the Metro Transit Garage. We want to discuss continued discussions with West Acres and get refocused on getting this transit hub put up out there. It's been challenging to get some funding to get that. We have had the study and we've identified various things, locations, etc. With West Acres, meetings we've had with them, and that has been, like I said, stalled out just a little bit due to a lack of funding. But we will be requesting that again this year. And we are looking at further evaluating, especially our Route 15 and Route 18 on the Fargo side, like Cole was talking about, to improve some of the on-time performance issues we've had. And I think the adjustments we've made have helped. We always want to look at continuing to improve wherever we can. We do plan on requesting an additional paratransit dispatching staff individual or FTE for 2024. We have discovered that we do not have enough staff to cover all the hours that the Ground Transportation Center is open and serve not only the paratransit riders, but the fixed route riders, drivers, all the activities that go on down there. And Fargo is in the process. We're actually very close to replacing TapRide software with our Transloc software for the on-demand service. TapRide, I believe Transloc bought out TapRide, which is why we're making that transition over. So next slide, please. Okay, and this one is mine too, Mr. Chair, the driver shortage update. We have, I think everybody understands the cities have contracts with First Transit, and First Transit provides the drivers and then management services for those drivers. They used to have the fixed route dispatch, but the cities, we took that over a couple years ago, and those people are now city employees. Every driver that we hire, or that I should say the First Transit hires, if they are going to be driving fixed route, they require a commercial driver's license with endorsements that include passenger endorsements. And those are much more challenging positions to fill because the CDL drivers are in demand tremendously right now. And so that's our fixed route side. Paratransit, they do not require a CDL to drive the vehicles we have, pardon me, on our paratransit service. Those vehicles they're the bigger ones you see out there. It says MAP Paratransit on this side. They're white with blue lettering. And it's strictly for people with disabilities that cannot use the fixed route service. But because of the size of the vehicle and the capacity of it, it does not require a CDL driver. So the challenge is not only getting people in to apply, but also getting people trained and out there to fulfill all the requirements that are part of being drivers. Provision of our full services, if we did not pull any hours back or make any adjustments of any kind and we were running our full service, we would require 91 drivers. That's a combination of full and part-time drivers. Currently, we are down about 26% for our driving staff, which is a huge impact. It doesn't help with when people want to take a vacation or a break, or someone calls in sick, or you need standby drivers to go out and when we add additional service, or we're at full service. There's such a ripple effect when we're not fully staffed, and we're down significantly right now. I know First Transit, we can all attest to, they have put forth extensive recruitment efforts. They've done a lot of creative things to try and attract and draw people in. Unfortunately, it has not gotten us the results that we had hoped. We get people, and oftentimes we will train them, and they will leave us after they've been trained, they've gotten their CDL, and move on to something else that requires a CDL. Our retention efforts include bonuses for safety performance, customer service, and those we offer monthly bonuses, we offer quarterly bonuses, and we have drivers that do receive those. And we had done recruitment bonuses as well over the course of the last couple of years. We had put forth quite a bit of funding to get those people through the door and get them trained and hopefully retain them. Again, and I apologize, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we haven't gotten where we really need to be. Wages and benefits, we have increased those a couple times in the last couple years for drivers. We have really pushed hard to get the drivers up to livable wages, benefits, and hopefully retain them when they get on board and they see that the wages are comparable with some other driving positions throughout the area. But what we're seeing is some of these positions that we're frankly competing with, some of those have also seen the efforts the rest of us put forward, and we're seeing wages go up again with all the changes that are going on in the market. And we all know unemployment in this area is extremely low, so we're drawing from a very limited pool. And if any of our transit publications through the industry, we see a lot of information come across that this trend of retention and recruitment, training, etc., everything that we do with our drivers, it's a problem nationwide. It's hard to wrap our mind around what it is that we need to do that's more that we can get people in the door. And I know the article we sent out a couple days ago outlined a very interesting study that APTA, the American Public Transportation Association, did recently, and they came out with some new insights that we hadn't really gleaned out of anything in the past. And it was interesting. In order to have a CDL, you have to be 21. That's a federal requirement. So we're already limited as far as what age group we can recruit from. Yet those age groups in the 20s, it does not seem to be a job that appeals to them to drive a bus. We have had some issues with security and safety. That has been an issue on some of the routes and buses, and we do know that has an impact on retention of drivers if they feel they are in an unsafe position, or they're not, frankly, not being heard when it comes to needing that kind of support. So again, those are the nationwide trends, they're the local trends, and we wanted to make you aware of this driver shortage. That though we keep pushing and trying everything we can think of, we are still short-staffed. So thank you. I didn't mean to go on so long.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody has any questions on those sections.
You guys going to maybe pause for questions from the anybody before we move on to item 3D? Do we have any questions that we can address? I had one question on the Phase 2 Transit Authority. Whereabouts does that put us in Phase 2? I mean, is there an end date in mind, or kind of how far along are we on that process?
Yes, we have. We're just finalizing our draft scope of work for that planning study. We had to, get the funding from the Federal Transit into a grant application, and that grant application is in process right now for both Fargo and Moorhead. We hope to get the request for qualifications released here at the end of February, early March, and have the study completed by the end of June. And basically what we're looking for is the new governance structure and cost sharing agreements as a transit authority for those to be drafted.
Okay. And do we have kind of an end date in mind where the transit authority needs to be in place, or would want to have it in place?
Yeah, I don't know that the earlier the better, I guess, because there's, and I don't know that we have officially a transit authority established at the state level, with North Dakota meeting every other year. I believe that's an issue as far as a full establishment of a transit authority.
Because I thought at one point in time there was some funding issues, or the ability, once we got to a certain population size, the funding mechanism could change, and we might need to have it done by a certain date. Is that not in place right yet, or?
The state, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that the census has been finalized, and yes, we have exceeded now. We're over the 200,000 magic number, and that will impact funding starting our next federal fiscal year, which is next October 1 of 2023 when that starts. We do have a little bit better understanding of how that's going to impact our funding. But with the actual authority being in place, we'd like to, with this study we're doing, get what structure would work the best and the most effective in place, and then outline steps moving forward if we want to actually go through the legislative process and go through the process to get some taxing authority, anything along those lines. I don't think we're at that point. We're going to set everything up the way with our existing staff and our existing resources set in motion then stepwise to get past what we would set up initially. But I think the long-term goal is definitely to look more like a transit authority.
Okay.
And the Federal Transit Administration informed us of the new census data being released just in December of 2022. And so they're going to be holding some training sessions with us on how do we transition from a small urban to a large urban and what those requirements are. And so, you know, there are quite a few steps that have to be done prior to October 1st of 2023 on splitting the revenues and apportionment. And we also become we also become a grantor of different funding sources that then we can sub-allocate to other transit systems like nursing homes and things too. That is a new piece for us that we have to look at in more detail as well.
Thanks. Other questions? Julie and Lori, I know you mentioned national trends with staffing shortages, and certainly all industries are struggling with that. Are there any, like Rochester, St. Cloud, are they in similar boat? Have you saw anything out there you went, wow, that was kind of a unique approach, or anything that's kind of out of the box, or is everybody kind of at this point locally here, St. Cloud, Duluth, same issues we're having?
St. Cloud did hire a company to do a wage study, and that wage study is supposed to be released in the next couple of weeks. So we're hoping to see, you know, some recommendations from that wage study. Duluth did something unique. Jordan, do you want to explain what Duluth did in order to try to attract more drivers?
Yeah, they did a community outreach program that was basically come drive the bus, and they allowed residents from the community or anybody from the community to come out and drive the bus on a closed course, just to give people a feel of what it takes to drive. They felt the event went well, however, it did not translate to recruiting any or very many drivers. I think they said they recruited about 3 drivers out of the event. They had over 200 people show up. But they said it was a good event. They would definitely do it again, even though the intent was to recruit drivers, and it did not really do that. But they said it was good. So.
Other questions before we move on? Okay, let's move on to item 3D, the update on the vehicle replacements. Jordan.
Yeah, so like Lori had mentioned earlier, we have been working with New Flyer for a while to get, or with Duluth and New Flyer to get pricing. I'm supposed to have pricing back from New Flyer this week for big buses. So hopefully we can get an order in by the end of the month here, February. They are looking at 18 to 24 month lead times. So we're looking at 2024, 2025 until we really actually see any new buses here on site. We are having 4 new paratransit vehicles delivered probably in April or May. They're supposed to be built first quarter here and then delivered to us. So that is fantastic news. There's a huge shortage for paratransit. The only reason we're getting those 4 is because we're literally the oldest order in the books. So any new order is definitely is 3 to 4 years out. Like Lori said, she is looking at her order she placed last year, or 2024, or possibly 2025 because of this date. So some good news coming. Stuff will be ordered and on its way. The bad news is going to take a while to get here. So we're making progress.
Jordan, anything on, obviously it's putting more stress on the existing fleet, parts and service for those, or everything kind of hanging together with baling wire, so to speak, or how's that going?
You nailed it. Yes, we are. We are seeing issues that we normally don't see with vehicles, just because they have a lot more miles and a lot more time on them than normal. Our paratransit vehicles are normally replaced at 150,000 miles, 5 years. We're currently running ones that are 8 years old that have 230,000 miles on them. So, yes, our maintenance costs have dramatically increased due to just the cost of things going up and the availability, and then the fact that, we're having to do some larger repairs that we normally wouldn't have to do. So yep, you're spot on that one.
Other questions for Jordan? Okay, we'll move on to item 3E, the marketing strategy for 2023. Taryn and Luke.
And hello, I'll get us started today. Basically for 2022, we wanted to present you with some of our goals. Some of them are projects that we're already in the process of outlining and getting started on, and some are areas that we would like to do more research on and improve upon this year. So this year we are going to be reassessing our approach to marketing. I think our current team is very strong and we're also flexible. So we're looking forward to looking at things from a new angle and challenging maybe how they've been done in the past and see if that's still serving our best interests. Previously, most of our marketing efforts have been directed and funneled toward key promotions throughout the year. And in recent years, both before and post-pandemic, the promotions haven't really significantly affected system ridership on their own. Overall ridership was decreasing prior to 2020, if you remember back that far, which was aligning with national trends. And 2022 ridership was at 74% of pre-pandemic numbers. So our number one goal this year is going to be focusing on education. For someone who's never been on public transportation, that lack of knowledge or even how to find that knowledge can be one of the biggest barriers. So we really want to focus on providing clear direction on how to transition to using that bus or how to be more efficient with using it if you're already one of our riders. Also, kind of as part of that education, we would like to start using video more often as a medium. It's such an engaging form of communication, as I'm sure all of you know. You see it all over social media, and the prevalence of Instagram Reels and TikTok have just exploded. And by adding more educational video options, we can really help people more effectively. So, and we're also catering to lots of different styles of learning. So we want to do kind of a series of videos, mini videos. They would only really need to be 1 or 2 minutes long, just on different topics. It might be something as simple as winter riding tips, which is a post we usually put on our website every year, saying things like, what do you do if bad weather is coming? How do you know if we're canceling service? Things like that. Or how to apply for discount fare. So there's lots of opportunities there. It's endless topics for something like that. And Luke?
Thanks, Darren. Morning. So one of the goals this year is we want to promote MapBus Connect, more promotion and education. And this year we're going to be working on a promotional campaign to highlight the Connect app and the mobile ticketing. We also plan to release a series of educational videos, including videos like getting started with Connect, video explaining what is fare capping, and another video about how to apply for a discount fare for disabled and elderly folks. We also plan to use our social media platforms to promote these videos and other Connect content. And by doing this, we're hoping that all this additional promotion and educational videos will, like Terrence said, maybe remove some barriers for existing riders and attract and educate new riders.
So next, we would like to take a closer look at our website at mapbus.com. We've had the current version of our website for a few years now, and we figured it was a good time to really take a thorough look and, audit all the different pages and see where are areas that we could restructure to make it more clear to navigate. Where do we need to update information, expand on information, or, do things like add supporting graphics or photos. We also as part of the MapUs Connect launch, we created a very extensive FAQ page, and we'd like to do something similar just for the greater MapBus system, and just think it would be a really valuable resource to have around.
Also this year, we talked a lot about maintaining digital marketing presence consistently throughout the year. We plan to reach out to digital advertising firms to help us have a consistent advertising presence year-round instead of only during special events, which is what we would traditionally do, like our street fair or Get Your Can on the Bus events. We kind of plan to do the same with our ads on radio and music streaming services like Spotify. The ads will highlight the value and benefits of riding that bus and are, intended to reach potential riders, hopefully to increase ridership. We're going to identify strategies to engage younger riders, elementary, high school, college. We're going to explore ways to reach them, especially college students, maybe getting them information to them and their parents sooner. Maybe do it throughout the year, having information about events coming up sent to their emails or stuffing their mailboxes with informational flyers. We also want to explore ways to reach elementary and high school kids, maybe highlight our existing programs like our free library rides or 90-day youth pass. Kind of hoping that by doing this, when getting the kids used to riding the bus, and then hopefully they'll continue to ride the bus into adulthood. We plan to identify underrepresented demographics for connection or educational support. We'll work to discover underrepresented demographics by researching our own data and reaching out to agencies and other partners to determine which demos may need the most support. Once we have identified them, then we can create action plans for outreach and education. We're also looking into exploring social media platform expansion, exploring options like Instagram or TikTok, seeing what kind of content we could produce, who we could reach using those platforms, determining what resources we would need to dedicate to them, and just in general if it would be worth pursuing. So that's kind of what we have coming up this year.
Okay, questions for Taryn and Luke?
Yeah, hi, this is Denise Kolpak. I just would thank you for that. My question is, as you refine your goals, will you be adding actual metrics, for instance, targeted demographics for students, or, how you want to increase the number of rides, et cetera?
Okay. I think, yeah, as we identify the ways that we want to reach out to people, we can have more measurable goals. Right now, it's kind of just a high level thing.
We do track ridership by customer type to see. We can see, and we'll see that later on in the presentation.
Sure.
Which customer groups we're seeing a decrease in.
Thank you.
And we can also see with ridership across each school that's in our UPass program, and trends of increase or decrease throughout those too.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thanks for the report. I will move on to item 3F, the Mobility Management Report. Sean.
No. We can't hear you, Sean.
Still can't hear Sean?
No, we can't hear him yet. Do you have it on your headset?
No, I never have that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Nope. There's your microphone. Try that one.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thanks, Lori.
You're welcome.
I think it might have been through Lori's microphone though.
Uh-oh, really?
Yeah. There's not one too left. We can't hear him.
Oh, maybe I need to give him my microphone. All right. You want to try my microphone?
I guess. Thank you. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the increase in ridership for paratransit, and starting with the applications. So starting with 2016 through 2022, we had pretty high approved riders in 2017. It kind of dropped off a bit through 2020, but now we're seeing an increase in applications that have been approved here in 2022. Next slide, please. So as you can see, since 2016, we've had a pretty steady increase in paratransit ridership. It dropped off quite a bit in 2020, but now we're seeing that increase quite a bit in 2021 and 2022. I'm not sure what happened after COVID, but I feel like from what I've been seeing, the normal drop-off we would normally see in the spring didn't happen in 2022. It stayed pretty steady. And there you can see that we've had the highest ridership in 2022 we've had since 2016. Next slide, please. And drilling down a little bit more, I've noticed that in 2022 we had quite the increase in ridership with Dilworth and West Fargo. But Moorhead and Fargo itself has stayed pretty steady. So when we do see an increase in Dilworth and West Fargo ridership, that means that we typically have longer trip times, which can result in increased revenue hours, wear to vehicles, more fuel usage, and more scheduling challenges. Typically, someone who lives in Dilworth or West Fargo is traveling, maybe to some place in South Fargo or even out to West Fargo, or West Fargo residents maybe going out to Dilworth. So those get to be pretty long rides. So we're going to keep tracking this and seeing how it goes, and we report in the future if we see anything that's changing or any other trends that emerge. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Any questions for Sean?
Yeah, I do have one question. It looks like actually that Fargo, so this is Steve Lindos from Moorhead. Looks like Moorhead and Fargo actually are a little bit down in the transit ridership.
Yeah, it can, it can fluctuate quite a bit, but I thought the biggest surprise when I put these numbers together was the increase in Dilworth and West Fargo. So I guess I can't explain the slight dip in Fargo and Moorhead.
And the challenges earlier discussed as far as drivers and hours, is that impacting this area too, as far as our individuals able to get to their appointments, or are paratransit hours a little bit more in the 8 to 5 range, and you're able to meet that demand?
It's definitely been a struggle. We struggle because First Transit has been able to supply us with an adequate amount of drivers for our runs, but it's with the additional ridership, we're having more vehicles out there, which results in more time on the road for vehicles that are already over their life usefulness. So it's kind of a perfect storm of all challenges: increased ridership, driver shortages, and vehicles getting older. So.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Sean? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 3G, the operations report. Cole and
Sorry,
Lori.
Kevin. This is Steve Linus again. I just said
yes,
real
go ahead,
quick.
Steve.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to the same thing of tracking, college ridership potentially when you look at single use versus an individual doing it multiple times. Are we able to drill down in terms of paratransit by kind of user? So in other words, is it more individuals that are using it more often, or is there a broad brand? And then the other aspect of Dilworth and West Fargo, can we drill down into kind of demographics of how they might be shifting to kind of understand maybe why these things are happening, why you're getting ridership shifting?
I do have to say, in Dilworth specifically, this last summer, the road construction, they really redid many of their roads. I mean, like majority of the roads that we travel on. So we had detours going on all summer, and that has made a difference because where we would normally pick people up with our fixed routes, I think they transferred onto paratransit because the paratransit vehicles could get to their doors easier with the detours than the fixed route could. So I think that we're seeing an increase there. We can, by our addresses, see where where people are riding from, groups of people, to see if it's because it's not close to a regular fixed route, because we don't have service within, 3/4 of a mile of every fixed route. There are areas of the town where we don't have service. So we can see that. And we're looking at some of those trends. We talked about, are there zones of the city where we don't have fixed route service that we could use tap ride, and people with paratransit could then take tap ride or similar microtransit kind of service. So there are some more studying that we need to do on where those trends are. And I know Jordan and Julie have been meeting pretty regularly, looking over the paratransit details if they want to add something to this.
Yeah, I thank you, Lori. I think some of what contributes to this is as city boundaries expand. For example, in Fargo now we go up to the Amazon area, and I know when Moorhead annexed in at Brentwood area and north of County Road 20, you look at West Fargo, how much expansion has gone on out there, and people are going to those areas and wanting transportation. So people with disabilities that ride the paratransit system, they can use any trip purpose they want. We cannot limit them, say go just to medical appointments. But we are seeing a big increase in dialysis patients that ride with us, dialysis facilities that have expanded throughout the metro area. We've seen a lot more medical transportation. I think we have, I know we have a lot of seniors that are starting to move into the area for different resources like the medical access. And we have had also with some of the social service agencies they have expanded, and they will build a facility or take over a facility that migrate. So they're migrating to other areas of the town that in the past we have not had people generating trips from those areas. So we're seeing some of those dynamics come into play with some of the shifts of what people are doing out there. So yeah, hopefully that helps you, Steve, with some of the trends that we're seeing. And like Lori said, we're doing some deep dives into some of this stuff. The issue is always that the ADA regulations require, if we have fixed route service, we must provide the complimentary paratransit. The one caveat that we've discussed in the past, the requirement is technically that we only have to provide the complimentary paratransit service within a quarter-mile corridor of any fixed route service we provide. So at some point, we may want to take a look at that. If I know it's no doubt a touchy subject, but we might want to consider continuing to provide service, but charging a different rate, which we can do if we're outside those required zones. So thank you.
Thank you. That was excellent information. And I kind of expected you guys were doing more deep dives into the data and the trends. Thanks.
You bet.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to item 3G, the operations report. Cole and Lori.
Thank you. So a lot of the ridership information that we can see on this slide kind of showcases things that we've been talking about throughout the year, the biggest of which being driver shortages and needing to implement route and service changes to accommodate the lack of staffing. If you see the first couple of routes on here, routes 11 through 15 have all been affected by the driver shortage. Routes 11, 14, and 13 all were half-hour frequencies. Those have been reduced to 1-hour frequency. With 11 and 14, you can see a pretty substantial drop of about 17%. My theory with Route 13 is we're kind of seeing college numbers returning back to normal, so that isn't quite as affected as you have more college students utilizing Route 13 to connect from North Dakota State University to the rest of our routes hubbing out of the Ground Transportation Center. Route 15 also did experience a little bit of a service cut. We did have 15-minute frequency before. That was reduced to half-an-hour frequency with a third bus en route during peak hours to increase that ever so slightly. Also with that, we did see a lot of road construction this summer along 13th Avenue, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and that definitely affected the on-time performance of 15, which kind of pushed some of our riders to use Route 16, which you see a 31% increase, just because it was a little bit more efficient for them to be able to travel from the Ground Transportation Center to West Acres, which is a pretty major destination. Route 17 and 18, we can see a pretty substantial increase, especially on Route 18. I believe that's just mainly due to ridership returning to pre-COVID levels, kind of seeing an increase there. Routes 20 and 24, we're both seeing fairly consistent ridership, slight decreases on both. Link FM did have a pretty drastic drop-off in ridership. We did see this last year that the street fare, which is kind of the main use of Link FM, had about half the riders that we did the previous year, looking at additional parking downtown kind of as the cause for that. Industrial Park tap ride services, we have seen a pretty substantial increase of almost about 50%. I think that the Industrial Park tap ride was one of the most heavily impacted routes, quote unquote. Post-COVID, we did see a substantial decrease in ridership there, but having that return over the last couple of years has been nice to see. As has been touched on before, paratransit, we are still seeing a increase in ridership of about 5%. 2020 compared to 2021, we saw a substantial increase, and then from 2021 to 2022, we're still seeing that going up. Then routes 31 through 36 and the NDSU TAP ride service, we all see substantial increases on those. Again, kind of indicating that regular college classes have been resuming since 2021 to 2022. So seeing a lot of NDSU students returning to on-campus classes and just beginning to utilize the routes that we have around the NDSU campus and the late night TAP ride service that we also offer. Next slide, please.
So here are the Moorhead routes, 1 through 9. The college routes are 1, 2, and 5. And at 1 and 2 with Concordia and MSUM, you're seeing some increases as the college students return to riding the transit system. Route 3 was on a major detour for not just the grade separation, which ended, but also 12th Avenue South and the railroad crossing there. So that route had to be really detoured way across town to get around the railroad tracks and still be able to make a crossing. And so that's seeing some decreases, I believe, because of that. Route 4 is our major shopping route that connects with routes 6 and 9 in Dilworth at the Walmart. And I'm actually surprised to see some decrease in service there. But again, it may be that there are people that are not shopping as much with the current economy and employment situations. Route 5 is the route that serves South Moorhead, south of the interstate. And we're seeing a slow comeback from COVID on that route. And then Route 6, Dilworth route, again, lots of construction, lots of detours this summer. Route 9 is our lowest ridership route. It serves Southeast Moorhead and the areas of Rise Middle School, Sanford Health, Menards, and that area. And it interlines with the Dilworth route, so it gets only hourly service. So when Route 6 was running detours, it was affecting Route 9 to some degree, but we're seeing some ridership there and going back up again, and it's good to see that that's going up. So the system-wide, we have Fargo, Moorhead total, system-wide, instead of just looking route to route, I can kind of get a feel for what's happening with ridership. Fargo ridership actually is up, Moorhead is slightly down, and system-wide, then again, we are up. So we are seeing some recovery of ridership from following COVID. Next slide.
And then this is kind of the breakdown that was alluded to earlier, taking a look at our different types of ridership, looking at adults, college, elderly, disabled youth, child, and then our total ridership. So we see a slight decrease in overall adult ridership at about 8%. As I touched on before, the college ridership is up significantly with classes returning to normal. Slight increase in elderly ridership at about 12.55%. A fairly substantial increase on disabled ridership at about 32%. Slight increases on youth and child as well at 8.85 and 16.97%. And overall, it is a increase in total ridership by these categories. And then breaking it down even further into the college ridership, you can see different statistics for local colleges, NDSU, MSUM, Concordia, M-State, and NDSCS. The first four all seeing fairly substantial increases ranging from about 40% to 55%, again, with classes returning to normal. NDSCS being the only decreasing ridership at down about 21%, but that is a fairly small amount of riders compared to the other colleges' ridership.
Next slide. So Metro Senior Ride for Moorhead and Dilworth. This is a service that's door-to-door for seniors age 60 and older. And we do split this between Moorhead and Dilworth. We have a joint powers agreement with Valley Senior Services that operates this with the two cities, just so that we have metropolitan service. And Moorhead ridership was up 17.3%, and Dilworth up 32%. So, Senior Ride is picking up also some of this demand increase that we're seeing through paratransit. And I believe about 70% of our seniors are people with disabilities who have a mobility aid or are certified for paratransit but choose to ride Senior Ride because Senior Ride does not have wheelchair lifts, but they will accommodate canes and walkers and things that can get into a regular Dodge Caravan. So they're helping with our demand increase by picking up more passengers. If you look at the long-term totals at the bottom, I put in a post-COVID recovery percent there so you could see how we're returning post-COVID, and we are, as at the end of 2022, we're 78% of the ridership that we had on Senior Ride before the pandemic. So it is starting to get to a point where it's recovering for seniors who are traveling in the community. I think, yeah, okay, so additional statistics. If you want to go back one slide. Cole, I'll let you talk about this one.
So again, this kind of touches on the driver shortages that we've been experiencing. We are seeing fairly significant decrease in revenue hours and revenue miles because of those service cuts. Obviously, if we can't supply the drivers for the routes, then we have less vehicles on routes and reducing the revenue hours and revenue miles on our fixed route buses. Moorhead cutting route to Charlie, you can see a approximate decrease of about 8.5% for both revenue hours and revenue miles. And Fargo with all additional service cuts between 15, 11, 13, 14, and the TAP ride service, you can see about 18% decrease in revenue miles or revenue hours and about 16.5% decrease in revenue miles. As was touched on before by Sean, we have been seeing an increase in paratransit revenue hours and revenue miles because of the essentially sprawling cityscape, seeing people taking longer trips into kind of more distant areas of town. So we have been seeing about an 8% increase in both revenue hours and revenue miles for paratransit. One thing that I personally found kind of interesting is that even though we are seeing a decrease in revenue hours and revenue miles, our efficiency in rides per hour, especially for the Fargo side, has gone up significantly. So just kind of showing that even though we don't have as frequent routes running, passengers are adjusting to that, taking other routes. So we're seeing the passengers per hour increase about 30% for Fargo and 3.2% for Moorhead. Paratransit is down slightly, again, to potentially longer trip times, and there's some other factors that could contribute to that, but down a little bit from 2.03 in 2021 to 1.96 per hour in 2022.
And on the Moorhead side, the revenue hour decrease was mostly the evening service from 9:45 to 11:15. There was some decrease in frequency on the MSUM Route 2 as in driver shortages, but they've been filling that mostly most of the time. So it's mostly evening service drop. Next slide. So we did the same for Senior Ride, so you could see that a little bit. So we were increasing hours and miles, and our rides per hour going up. Most of the Senior Rides are one person at a time going. There's not a lot of groups going on the Senior Ride, so our rides per hour are fairly low on that service at 1.31. Does anybody have any questions for us on that?
Any questions?
Yes, this is Steve Lundas. I have a question. I really liked, Lori, what you did with the total passengers for the Senior Ride, because you can kind of see the COVID dip and that we're not quite back to COVID levels, but it's rising, kind of understandably so. I'm curious about colleges too, in terms of, we just have this snapshot. They're definitely rebounding after, kind of the transition from, in-person to online learning. But are they back to 2018, 2019 levels? And maybe even more importantly, looking at that levels, but also demographics on campus are changing. So it's almost where you might be useful to look at a per capita basis, for campus ridership, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, we have data by college for trends over the years from the UPass program start to now, so we can see that trend, and we'll make sure to share that with the group the next time that we get together. But we do have that data.
Yeah, I can pull up a little bit of that here quickly.
Do we have the ability to kind of look at, again, this is getting maybe into the weeds, but in colleges, is there an opportunity? Do you see that there's, a core number of people that are using it, or is it spread out amongst, because I can see NDSU potentially having more, a spread of people using it to get between or move amongst the campus downtown and not. Whereas Moorhead might be, Concordia and MSUM and M-State might be people using it to get to campus, and there's a core ridership.
We can. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you can identify, maybe there's a different marketing strategies that you use then on the campuses to increase ridership.
We do have the ability to see the number of rides under the UPass program, because the college IDs are swiped through the fare box. And so we can see, if we have 400 riders, did they ride once or are they riding every day? And so there are some levels of data like that we can dive into. And we usually provide that to the colleges when they ask us for it. On the NDSU side, most of the around campus, near campus ridership, they aren't required to swipe their ID, because they're on campus. They just push a manual button to count them. But if they're out in the community, they have to use their UPass, their college ID on the fare box, so we can see some of those patterns too as they come into campus.
And then I can mention quick, I don't have a breakdown by college for the pre-2020 college ridership, but in 2019, we had a total of just over 700,000 college students, and in 2022, we are at 335,000, so slightly under half of the college ridership that we're seeing pre-COVID, so still a ways to go with that one.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? All right, hearing none. Any information on potential next meeting date? That was going to be in March sometime. I don't know, Laura and Julie, if you have anything on the horizon yet.
Yeah, in March we're looking at budget time. Okay. So a lot of personnel and vehicles and equipment, and what are we doing with budgets and contracts and things that come up in March.
Okay. So stay tuned for that date. We'll get something out as far as some date times. Anything else? Any other business? All right. Hearing none, we are officially adjourned. Thanks, everyone, and stay warm.